Well, welcome to the Off Central podcast. My name is Jonathan, and I have two guests here with me today. It is back to school week, so if you're watching this and you're a parent, undoubtedly this week you will have dropped your kids back off to school again after a long summer break. And so today we're talking about all things generations and all things kids. So I have Pastor Andrea with me here today.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we also have Pastor Ryan, our youth pastor, here with us today.
Glad to be here and love the new set. Looks great.
Yeah, I know. We've been working hard behind the scenes to make it look all fancy. Ryan was on his hands and knees a few weeks ago doing these very pretty orange lights behind us. So
literally put not tears, but blood and sweat into this.
No, not tears, but real blood. I saw it. I saw the cuts on his hands.
Yeah, you still have a little scar.
Sacrificing yourself. What a human being
What a servant
you are. Well, today we are talking generations, and I love this because we literally have three workers here who are working with three different generations. Andrea working with Generation Alpha. You're working with Gen Z, and I'm working with Gen Y, or the millennials. Yep. And so we kind of wanted to discuss what are some of the characteristics of these generations, and how do we as a community, as people, as parents, as mentors, support them and lift them up and encourage them, and what are we noticing as well with this generation. And so looking forward to picking your brains a little bit as you're, hands and feet practically working. You guys are in the muck, working with them. This isn't sort of theory. This is like you guys are practitioners, and sort of, you're in the war zone, as it were, working with these kids. And so really interested to hear some of your thoughts today. So I thought maybe as we sort of start this conversation around generations, maybe Andrea, if I could ask you first, like when it comes to particularly this young generation, this alpha generation, if I were to say, what are some of the characteristics that really characterizes this generation that is maybe more unique or different from how you were growing up, or even some of the kids that you've worked with previously? This, you've been doing kids ministry for a little while now. What would you say are some of the real key characteristics, positive or maybe some challenges as well, with this sort of emerging, young, budding generation that are just discovering life?
Well, I would say within Gen Alpha, because if Gen Alpha's born, I think it's from 2025 through 2018, okay. I think. So, I mean, that's a wide range. And within that range, you also have your COVID babies. So it's very funny, the difference from your COVID babies. I mean, I have one living at home as well as seeing them, here at church. They're wild. They're crazy. They really are, but they're fun.
Okay.
They're so much fun. When I have my daughter, I mean, she keeps me on my toes. But you go in that classroom with the rest of the COVID babies, and they're all doing the same thing. So I don't know what it is there, but it's a fun generation. They need to stay active. And I see that through the elementary aged kids as well. I feel like when I was younger, I mean, in church, we sat down, we listened to the story, we had the felt board. It wasn't as hands-on. Nowadays, you need hands-on.
That's really interesting.
You need to keep them active. You need to keep them focused. Otherwise, you've lost them.
Right.
You can't expect a classroom of kids to just sit. No, some might need to walk around. And you know what? You let them walk around, and you know that they're still getting something. They're still paying attention. They just need to be active. So it's a different way with this next generation, with these young kids. It's learning how to work with the children on their level to get them to interact back with you, to get them to focus, to get them to listen. But it's fun. You got to be creative.
That's really interesting that you're absolutely right. Like when you said, when we went into a classroom growing up, it was sit down, be quiet. It's time for listening. Do you think that's one of the big changes, is that when we were outside of classroom, we were extremely active. And so we went into classroom, it was time to sit down and focus. Maybe the shift is out of classroom, there's a bit more sedentary lifestyle maybe.
Absolutely,
you're on screen, you're doing stuff. So when you're in classroom, you kind of got to switch it up. The way to focus is to get them moving again. And is that?
Absolutely right. Because now they have tablets. And, well, how much screen time do I have? That's the reward. They look forward to screen time, not look forward to going outside to ride my bike. And so it has flip-flopped there, which is interesting. I've never thought of it that way, but it really has. Or even in school, they have computers now to learn, to do their activities. And so when they come here to church, they don't want it to be school.
Right.
And we want to meet them on their level. We want them to come to church and not think, oh, this is boring. Why am I here? Because as they get older, that's what they remember what church is.
Yeah.
We want it to be fun. We want it to be active. We want it to be their church. And that's what we try to do with these littles. It's your church. You tell us how to run it. And we'll give you Jesus.
I love that intentionality behind creating really positive associations and memories for these kids.
Yes.
The last thing we want to do is give them 10 years of boredom, and that sets their expectation of what church is for the rest of their life. Because at these formative years, the expectations we set, they will carry for a very long time, or they're very difficult to undo once an expectation is set.
Right.
But also the benefit of that is if we can set a positive expectation that church is fun, it's engaging, there's community, then that equally is hard to change. As they grow up, they walk in with this sense of like, no, I want to do this because there's enjoyment in it.
Yeah.
Really interesting. What about you then, Ryan, when it comes to like, more the teenagers? They've been with screens for longer now. This is a generation that have also don't know anything other than the digital age. Like my generation, we were a little bit of a blended. Some of us had it and then we didn't have it, but you're really working with teens who, like these kids, have sat with technology now for longer, but above the technology. Yeah. What are you seeing that's really interesting about this generation?
Yeah, a lot of like when you look up like stats about Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they'll coin the term they're digital natives. So like I've even seen this much younger kids, but like there's been kids I've been around that before they can learn to talk, they're using an iPad and navigating a phone, like they're navigating mom or dad's phone. And so granted, that's a little bit younger, but still kind of that Gen Z, Gen Alpha age. They're digital natives. Like before they really do much anything else in the world, they're on tablets and phones and things like that. So they've grown up fully in a era where like everything in a sense is like, it's first digital, and they know online digital things first before they kind of know like other things in a sense. And so it's funny when you're mentioning like they need to be active and they need to be doing things, like just how much students are multitaskers. So like I get this story all the time where it's like a kid will be at home, like a 9th, 10th grader, they'll have a friend on FaceTime or a FaceTime group with an AirPod in, listening to music, watching Netflix, and doing like homework or something like that. And it's like they've got to have 4 things going all at once for them to focus, which is very interesting because like I think of like if I'm doing work, maybe I'll put music on. That's kind of about the extent of it. I'm not putting on a show or anything like that. So it's interesting just the compartmentalizing of their brains and how they function and all that sort of stuff. So it poses a bit of an interesting challenge on like the side of like a Wednesday night. But I do think when kids come into like a separate space that is outside the home, there is a little bit of kind of a difference, and they do enjoy kind of like being in a space where they can hang out with people and learn things and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting on the side of like, they're just multitaskers and they've got to have like 15 things going on at once. They've got to have the AirPod with music and maybe a podcast going on in order to like focus. And for me, that's just so different because I'm like, if you want to focus, you do one thing at a time, not 4,
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's really interesting. So like when the focus is a big thing, but when you talk about like, what are the real like characteristics of this generation? Like what are some of the things that come to your mind? Are they energetic or great connectors, or maybe some of the more positive traits? I think so often we talk about some of the negatives, and that was true for my generation. Like every social scientist only talked about the negatives of millennials and how they're entitled and they're slothful and da. I actually did my whole thesis, my master's thesis on the positive things about my generation. So when you think about like Gen Z, what are you seeing that's like really healthy signs or signs of like, man, this generation is incredible at this?
Yeah, I feel like they view life as like sky's the limit. Like they don't, they haven't really created like artificial barriers and like mental like walls of what they can and can't do. For them, they literally can do anything in the world. They literally can. I mean, you think of the phone and the possibilities of starting businesses, creating initiatives, being activists about things. Like, I don't see them as like they've artificially imposed any sort of barriers upon themselves, because there's such a global generation. Like, the whole world is so connected, and there's so much access that you have on your phone and within all the technology that we have. And so if you can focus their energy in the right space, I mean, sky's the limit. They can do anything that they set their mind to. They have every bit of resource they need, every bit of information, every bit of passion, every bit of ability to do anything that they want to do. And a lot of them want to do positive things. They want to help people and, you know, solve things like homelessness and like climate change and things like that. They want to solve these big issues. And for them, they don't see like, oh, I'm just a kid, I can't solve that. They see, I'm a kid, so I can solve those things. And so they have just a very like, the horizon is infinite, and they are willing to jump into that infinite possibility. And I think that's really cool about them.
That's really interesting.
It's neat. There's fifth graders that have just come over to Rhythm, and I already see that in them. They're creating websites to sell stuff, and then a portion of it goes to save turtles. And I'm like, how did you figure out how to create a website?
Yeah,
like, how are you saving? Like, it's neat though. It's really encouraging to see their.
Yeah,
it's like a real entrepreneurial kind of spirit to them. Like, they can navigate things that us elder millennials might get a bit lost in.
Yeah. They know how to connect to people. They know how to like kind of create spaces, and they know how to navigate like the digital spaces and world way better. And they just, because they're digital natives, they just know that. I don't know why I'm thinking of the word that terroir, or is that the word terroir, or the terrain or whatever it is. They know that terrain really, really well, and they know how to get to where they're wanting to go. And so they're really smart and savvy about, okay, I want to do this thing. Here's the 15 avenues I can take. Let me take one and let's just get there.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that you used that word. I would say that's one of the things I've noticed, particularly with younger generations, how savvy they are. Like, they can notice, they know fake AI stuff. They're just so quick to pick up on it. Whereas I've seen people, my generation and older, get sucked into fake news a bit quicker than young people are much quicker at noticing and spotting errors. And so they are digitally way more savvy when it comes to stuff like that. Even though they do struggle, I think, still with human connection and interaction sometimes, and nuances in conversation. But when it comes to digital conversation, they're extremely savvy and on
they're
point.
Experts at that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think of it like in some senses, like human history, we've been advertised to our whole lives, but it's so much different now. Like, you think of YouTube, like the one thing about YouTube is it was so great and it was amazing, and then they started introducing ads, and now it's an unskippable ads, and now it's 2 ads, and now it's ads in the middle of the video, and it's just like, can we stop? Like, it just enrages me how many ads we see. But we have so many ads, and like every space is like try to fill in as many ads as we possibly can. And so because they've grown up in that digital world, they know when they're being sold to, and they know when they're like, oh, we're trying to be your friend in order to make you buy something. They can see that really quickly, and I think that has translated into interaction. They can tell when, am I being your friend or being friendly to you to get something from you or to be your friend? And they can pick that up really quickly because of how much in the way they've been advertised to so much their entire lives online.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, maybe let's switch gears into like talking about their spirituality. And so here's a stat that comes from Barna. It says 77% of US teens say religion or spirituality is important to them. But there's a caveat with that. And the caveat is that they're skeptical of institutions. And so technically we work for an institution. I don't think we would think of it that way or classify it in that way, but we work for a structured way of doing spirituality. And I just wondered if you have any thoughts around what you're noticing in terms of, are they leaning into spirituality? And because some of the statistics we're seeing with young people, particularly in America and secularized society, is how they are really seem to be running towards spirituality again and discovering. And is that something you're seeing? And if so, do you have any sort of anecdotes towards that, or something that you find that's really interesting or nuanced about this generation and their sort of gravitational pull towards spirituality?
You can go first.
Well, with obviously with my age, it's about the parents.
Right.
It's really about the parents. I mean, we have them, if it's a good year, 40 hours a year at church.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, bringing them to church, it's so important, not just to bring them here, but to create the community, to create the relationships. And it really depends on the parents. It's how do the parents view coming to church? Well, why do we come to church? It's not, oh, we're checking off the box because we have to get there. No, it's we want to go be around others who will encourage us, will hold us accountable. We want to serve others. We want to get out of the building with our church family and find opportunities to be Jesus on the streets. And so if the kids are seeing that from their parents, well, they're going to, in my opinion, grow up to that's what we do. I mean, I grew up in a Christian home, and just watching my mother, that's what she did. She didn't play church. No, we lived it. And so seeing her passion for other people because of the love of Christ in her, and seeing her be the hands and feet of Jesus, well, that just from a young age, okay, that's what I do. That's how I live for Jesus. And so the kids that we see here, you can absolutely tell a difference when it's not just church, it's not just home, but it's when the church and home combine that really makes an impact on their spiritual development at a young age, saying, no, this is real because it's how we live. You know, I'm going to church, I'm making the relationships, I belong here, this is my church, and this is what we do. We don't just sit in the pews. That's another thing I see, at least in the younger generation, is I think you said they want to make an impact, and they do. I mean, they want to serve. We have a backpacking, back to school supply drive where we collect donations, and the school supplies and backpacks go to children all throughout our community, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Harford County. Well, we've done it. I believe this is our third year in doing that back to school donation drive. Well, before I was even setting it up, I had kids coming up to me, hey, when's our serving day? When's our backpack serving day? And I'm like, it's coming, I promise. But they look forward to serving. And it's when, again, at home makes it a priority that this is how we live. This is a part of us.
Yeah. Well, that's that's definitely interesting that parents still at those formative years really set the tone for kids. And then as we move into teen years, where there's a bit more self-agency and there's a bit more autonomy that's handed. Teens like to think of themselves as totally autonomous.
Exactly.
Yet they don't work or pay rent or do anything yet, but they do like to think of themselves as that way. Maybe what are you seeing then as they begin to discover for themselves, not their parents' religion, but they're starting to make these sort of choices for themselves? What are you seeing in their gravitational pull?
Yeah, I see like the statistic that you shared, like Gen Alpha is so open spiritually. That's kind of the more the, at least the statistics I see is like on the broad end, they're just open spiritually. Like whether it's they specifically are like, oh, I'm Christian or Muslim or whatever sort of organized religion, but at least there's like I want to say the stat was like 70 to 80% of like teenagers, like Gen Alpha, they believe that there's some higher power and they're open and they're curious about spirituality in a general sense. And so I think they intuitively know that there's just something beyond this like material world of like, go get a job, make money, do that sort of thing. And so they know that there's something. And so when I see students come through and they like something about the gospel just clicks in their mind, they jump in so far, they go so head first in and they dive in, and the amount of information they have available to them makes that curiosity just kind of blossom even more. Like there's one student that she came, I want to say a year ago, and she came from like just new age spirituality of like crystals and things like that and whatnot. And so she came from that, but then she was like, oh, she got saved, and she's been researching into the Bible, and she's bought a couple Bibles and all that. And just the amount of info that she knows about Scripture is like, oh, you've researched, like, and you've really dug into this thing. There's a lot of things that, like, in, you know, experience and following Jesus for a long time that you eventually pick up on and stuff like that. But it's really cool to see how hungry they are for information, but at the same time, it's cool that there is so much information available. Like we're in the information age, and we're kind of in, you know, anything you want to know, you can find in about 30 seconds or so on your phone. And so when they want to know about Scripture and they want to know about spirituality, they have all of that info available to them. And kind of in that entrepreneurial sense, they go and find it. They know where to look for it, and they go find it. And they're like, oh, it's kind of like they could ask people, but there's sort of this internal thing of like, oh, I'll just Google it, or I'll just ChatGPT it. I'll just do it myself, and I can just go find all the info myself. Because it's, in fairness, it's really easy. It's really simple. Just if you have a question about faith, about spirituality, about the Bible, you just Google it, and they look into it. They look through forums, and they do their thing, and they look it up themselves.
And that's such a big shift. You know, as I was growing up, we got the internet, and that was obviously a big shift, but the internet made the Bible available to everybody. You can go up and look up the Scripture and like, it's right there everywhere, anytime you want it. But what we didn't necessarily have was an AI giving me the 10 top theological thoughts from Søren Kierkegaard to Augustine, distilled down in a way that in one paragraph that I can understand.
Yeah.
And so it's a different kind of access. It's not just access to the Bible. You can gain access to everybody's thoughts on it, but not only that, explained in a way that is palatable to your age group, which is just crazy that they can do that. But also there's, I think what's really interesting about young generation, like millennials, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, it was like the new atheist wave. There was the popular cultural mainstream thing. It was Hitchens, Christopher Hitchens, it was Sam Harris, it was Richard Dawkins. Culturally, it was just very popular to be an atheist. And just faith in God was in the decline. But nowadays, it's like, I don't know many young people that say I'm an atheist. Like, I actively do not believe in God. I almost never meet young people that say that anymore. But I do meet lots of young people that are still dubious about institution and about is the church safe, and is the church really the answer? And I think that's one of the dangers, isn't it? Is that they have ChatGPT, which can give them access to Augustine's thoughts on Genesis 4, but they can research that themselves. But they can also be completely disconnected from community and from life. And I don't know how you feel. That's certainly how I feel. That's really the core of what Jesus was trying to build. Wasn't so much a theology. It was a community of people. Like, you'll know us by the way that you love each other and are connected to each other. And do you find that young people still desperately long for community? And that's, or is it difficult for them? Is that like a hurdle or an obstacle you feel like as pastors you have to help kids overcome?
I can say I see this more with the 4th and 5th. We have the preteen leadership group. And at least with that core group of kids, they want to be together, which I'm a little surprised about, because they do have, let's get on FaceTime together. Let's, they have those groups. They have those groups. They do that together. That's kind of become their community. And a lot of kids is through FaceTime, through our chat group. But at the same time, they want to be together. I mean, just watching the kids come together on small group night, I had parents tell me, like, we had another thing we were supposed to do tonight, but my child said, no, I have preteen group. I need to be here. And so the kids wanted to come and wanted to read Scripture. Like, they wanted to be together to do that. So I see that in the 4th and 5th grade. Younger than that, they want to be together. They want to play. They want to hang out.
Sure.
But it does little by little start to change. So I don't know if when you then get them.
Yeah.
Like, let me put a scenario to you. You have a room, you have 8 kids, and you have a room, one room has 8 iPads and 8 headphones, and another room has a pool table and some music. Which room do those 8 kids go into?
Usually I would probably say the room with stuff to do. But kind of how I think of it is because they've grown up in this digital native, it's sort of like the first thing they were given was the digital space. And once they've kind of been exposed to like, oh, being around people is actually so much better, then it's sort of like, then they realize, oh, like phones are good, but I would actually rather be around people. Like I've seen that with like teenagers, like, cause like social anxiety is such a big thing with teenagers these days. And I find so many students will come through on a Wednesday, Sunday, whatever it is. And at first they're very like, kind of like quiet to themselves, hesitant, like just go on their phone. They're just like, oh, I don't know, and I'm scared and stuff like that. And like it takes a little bit of nudge of like, no, I think you should go like play pool or go play ping pong or do this thing or whatever. And they're like, I don't know, and I'm like, I think you'll enjoy it. And so you give them, a few little easy nudges and stuff, and eventually they go, and then you find they're never even on their phone after that. And so it's like they have to kind of be exposed to and learn and kind of get over that hurdle of like the social anxiety of like, oh, people, and it's scary and it's difficult. But once they see and once they experience, oh, people, it's almost like it switches in their brain and they would actually so much rather be around people. And they realize that digital stuff it's fun, it's cool, but it has its place. People is really the thing. Yeah.
And I'm seeing that when they're bored, that's what they go to now. I'm bored, so let me get on the tablet versus I'd rather be
Let me go hang out
which
with
is
you.
encouraging about this next generation.
Yeah, because boredom is such an important part of our childhoods. It's what stimulates creativity and initiative. And but I think so many of us haven't. I made the joke on Sunday that I haven't been bored since the year 2000 because we have this thing we can always run to or go to for more stimulus. But that's interesting, as like young people, we're very hardwired, I think, to desire and want community, and we kind of get trained out of it. And then we have to get trained back into it. And it's kind of what you're saying is like, there's once they're around community, there's like a fruit that they experience from being around that's actually really healthy for them. Well, we're kind of really coming to the end of the podcast. Maybe just one final question, one final quick thought. What gives you hope for the future when it comes to this generation? What is it you're excited about? And where do you see like your generation, where do you see them in 20 years? Like, what are they doing? And are you hopeful, or do you live with sort of a sense of dread or a weightiness? Or is it like, no, there's way more hope than dread in my heart?
I am so hopeful for this generation. It's so neat. Just a quick story. When we went to kids camp, I know a lot of times us adults look at kids as they're too young to understand. They're too young to really encounter God, especially the ones I deal with. I mean, the preschoolers. Oh, yeah, we put them in there for them to babysit while we go to church. That's not it at all. For example, my Ember, she is 4 years old, and we're driving somewhere the other day, and she said, oh, Mommy, I gave so-and-so, a kid in preschool, a Band-Aid. Okay, hon, that's great. She goes, but no, that's what Jesus would want me to do. And I'm like, well, why is that? And she said, well, you know the story where the guy is hurt, and he's laying on the ground, and people walk by him, and no one helps him. She's recreating the Good Samaritan.
Right.
And I had to stop and think, these stories in the Bible, this generation knows how to apply it. And my 4-year-old is applying it in her mind, in her way. But then you go up to your elementary age, and as I was going to share at kids camp, their desire to be at the altar is amazing. The one night, and in my adult mind, I'm like, okay, it's 9:00. First of all, we're nearing bedtime. They have a snack store. They have the store. They're going to want to go there. They're at the altar. Kids are starting to leave. My group's still there. So, I don't want to mess up this time they're having, but all this going through my head, and I kind of just go over and I'm like, girls, people are leaving. Do you want to stay here, or do we want to move on? They all looked up at me. No, I want to stay here. Okay, let me back out of God's way here.
Right. Yeah.
Because they want to be at the altar. And that is just so encouraging about this generation. The hunger. And the way that they're applying scripture, not just learning these Bible stories, but applying it and wanting more.
Yeah, and I see the same thing. Like, I think of that verse of Jesus talks about it, I think it was Matthew 9, where he says, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And I feel like like, you can say this about any time in human history, but at least right now, I feel like that verse has never been more true. Like, the harvest really is plentiful. Like, people, students, young people, they are open spiritually, and they're looking for truth. They're looking for more than just like a fact. They're looking for truth.
Yeah.
They're looking for something deeper. And I think by and large, most teenagers like Gen Alpha, Gen Z, and the next generation, which I was just looking up, apparently is Generation Beta, and apparently they're being born this year, which is crazy.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
New generation.
Yeah, because it's 2025 and
Okay.
about, whatever time and stuff like that. But what I'm noticing about like young people is I feel like the two things they're really looking for is they're looking for truth, like not just facts, but truth, like less information and more truth. And they're looking for a place to belong. And the thing I think is really cool is the church is the perfect place to find both of those things. Mm-hmm. The plot line that we've created in humanity, the happy ending of that really does belong at the church. And this community of people that are pursuing Jesus, they're finding truth in Jesus because Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And they find real community and real belonging and a real sense. And I think young people are sort of waking up to the realization that like they're not going to find truth just in Instagram posts and TikTok and whatever. They're going to find truth somewhere deeper than just that. And they're also not going to find the kind of belonging and sense of community that they want to find in TikTok and, group chats and FaceTimes and stuff. They're going to find that in real community. And I think the church is a really great place to find that. And I think people are realizing that and seeing that. And so I think the harvest is plentiful, and it's never been more true ever in human history.
That's a great note to finish on, guys. Thank you so much for coming to share some of your insights and what you're seeing in ministry, and keep going, keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this in some way has challenged you to think slightly differently and to reach out and engage with young people. They're the next generation. They're incredibly important. They're not just the generation that are up and coming, they're here and now. And we just believe in empowering and equipping them as much as possible. So I hope that this has in some way enriched your life. God bless. We'll see you next time.